On the coast of the Philippines sits a massive cylindrical concrete dome. It is the Bataan nuclear power plant. Construction began in 1976, but decades later, the facility remains inoperable, having never produced a single watt of electricity. To build it, the Philippine government committed hundreds of millions of dollars to foreign contractors. A project of this financial scale made the construction site a prime target for systemic graft. The architect of that graft was Herminio T. Disini. He was a private businessman who leveraged a close personal relationship with then-President Ferdinand Marcos to act as a gatekeeper for the entire project. Disini operated as a special sales representative for firms like Westinghouse Electric. He used his presidential access to ensure these companies won the power plant contracts in exchange for commissions worth millions, despite providing no actual engineering services. The plant became a physical monument to influence peddling, draining hundreds of millions from the national treasury while enriching a select few. Long after the Marcos regime ended, the Philippine government successfully sued Disini's estate in a lower court. The judge ordered the estate to return exactly $50,562,500 in ill-gotten wealth. The prosecution derived that $50 million figure from Exhibit E9, a one-page tabulation of commissions found on Disini's personal stationery. But the government's entire victory rested on a fragile foundation. Exhibit E9 was only a photocopy. Disini's legal team immediately appealed the case to the Supreme Court on procedural grounds. They invoked the best evidence rule. This doctrine requires a court to reject an unauthenticated photocopy when a party is trying to prove the exact terms of a document. To the law, the original is the only reliable truth. If the core mathematical evidence was legally inadmissible, the estate of a corrupt middleman was poised to escape a $50 million penalty on a technicality. The Supreme Court had to determine if a crime could be penalized when the central ledger detailing that crime had been thrown out of court. In a criminal trial, the missing paperwork might have been fatal to the case, but this was a civil trial for the recovery of ill-gotten wealth, which operates under different evidentiary standards. The court used the preponderance of evidence standard. The government only needed to tip the scale slightly past 50% to show their version of events was more likely true than not. Because Disini had defaulted and offered no defense, the government simply needed to present a credible, heavier alternative to the missing paperwork. They pivoted from the documents to human testimony, calling in former executives from Disini's own corporations who were present when the deals were struck. These insiders mapped the mechanics of the scheme, confirming under oath that presidential influence was sold and millions in commissions were routed to offshore accounts in Switzerland. This eyewitness testimony definitively proved the corrupt scheme existed, allowing the court to move forward without the original paper contract. The Supreme Court agreed that Disini was undeniably guilty. However, the best evidence rule still forbid them from using the $50 million calculation from the photocopy to set the fine. The court had to penalize the theft, even as the law barred them from referencing the stolen ledger. They turned to Article 2224 of the Civil Code. This article introduces temperate damages. It allows a judge to set a penalty when financial loss is certain, but the exact amount is impossible to prove. The Supreme Court issued its final judgment, 1 billion pesos in temperate damages, plus 1 million in exemplary damages. The court set the fine based on the decades of public deprivation the scheme cost the nation, creating a high-profile deterrent against future graft. Through equity jurisdiction, the law can adapt to hidden paper trails, ensuring that procedural technicalities do not provide a sanctuary for corruption.